Okay, welcome back to the neutralization segment of our acid staining training course. In this module, we're going to basically just be covering what it takes after your acid stain has dried for 24 hours to get it neutralized and cleaned up from all the residue that's left behind. If you're fortunate enough that there isn't much residue left behind, that's wonderful. It means that much less to clean up. This is a very, very messy process. And so at the end of the day, it's pretty labor intensive, maybe not quite as much as the floor prepping, but there's lots and lots of mopping to get this all cleaned up. So typically what we find in concrete that's 20, 30 years old and newer is that there's going to be a residue that's left behind after it's dried. Especially in the puddle areas, there will oftentimes be real heavy residues left behind, and it's kind of a film that what happens with the hydrochloric acid when it reacts with the calcium and the alkali that's in the concrete itself. There's a chemical reaction that takes place there, and all the contaminants and all the various and sundry chemicals that are in the surface of the concrete come to the surface and they rest on top there in form of this film or residue of the acid stain because it's going through a chemical reaction. It's boiling. If you've ever used muriatic acid, any kind of acid for that matter, on any kind of masonry, concrete surfaces, you can see that there is a quick heat reaction that takes place when it mingles with the concrete itself. And that's what happens here with the acid staining. So it's going to be a repeat and a repeat and a repeat of the same thing over and over again. Oftentimes it takes 5, 6, 7 cleanings and rinsings with lots and lots of water. Excuse me once again. To get all the residue off of your floor after you've applied the acid stain. So when you take your buckets of residue and color out to dispose of it, this is a word of caution for you. Do not throw it into your bushes or your grass or any of your decorative rock covering landscape. You want to try to take it into an area that you can rinse it down really super good, and or if you've got the fortune of having some space where you've just got a dirt patch, a gravel patch that you don't care about and that you're not worried about destroying the environment. I got to be careful about that environment thing. So there's still enough latency left in the residue of the hydrochloric acid that's in the acid stain that it will kill grass, it'll kill the less hardy of shrubbery, it'll burn anything that's green if it gets on it. So you just need to plan carefully where you're going to dispose of the buckets of residue, the dirty water, after you've cleaned and mopped up your floor each time. If it is that you've got a gravel landscape area that you can rinse it down into, that'll work too. You just have to you have to get the gravel wet first. So let's say you've got a decorative gravel space, that's the only place that you can dump this acid stain residue. You get the rocks wet first so that the stain doesn't take to it, the residue doesn't take to the rocks. And then after you've dumped it into the rock bed, then you rinse it down super good past the rocks again. And then you'll just be repeating that over and over again if that's your disposal site that you're using for the residue and the dirty water from mopping. Once you have all of the residue cleaned up and you feel really good about that, and the sign is the water itself that you're mopping in. Each time you're putting in a new clean bucket of water, you're also going to be cleaning and rinsing out your mop so that you don't have residue concentrated in your mop itself. So if you follow me here, when you're out there rinsing out, dumping out the residue of the acid stain, you're also going to rinse down the best that you can. You don't get it all fully out of your mop because it absorbs so much water and the color, but you can get most of it out. And just use the pressure of your garden hose with a sprayer, and our video footage will demonstrate how we do that, so you can see how that's done. Your water is going to be your best indicator if you're ready or not to be complete with the neutralization side of things. The neutralization products also, the three options that we talk about are the TSP, the baking soda, and or the vinegar if you want to try to use those to mix in with your water. In truth, you use so much water, the concrete is flooded so heavy with just water that oftentimes you don't even need the neutralization products. I know that maybe kind of contradict what the manufacturer says on this, but the truth is the hydrochloric acid has already done its chemical reaction, it's burned off, and now you're just flooding the surface over and over again to clean up all of the residue that's left behind, and essentially the chemical reaction is already done and over with. So there's not a lot to neutralize, but it's good if you can do that. It's not to worry if you don't put in the baking soda, the vinegar, or the TSP to neutralize the water. So that it's not pushing you one way or the other in putting the neutralization products into the water to apply onto your concrete. So I say this casually because we've done it both ways, and we've not had any issues over the course of 40 some odd years now that is an issue of blistering, bubbling, delamination of the epoxy or the urethane clear coats on top of acid stain projects. So 0 callbacks. Yay. Keep in mind too that any overspray on masking, if you rub up against that with your clothes or your hands or whatever, it's still pretty concentrated as it's stuck on the visqueen if you've had to do the masking on your walls. So just a side note there, just kind of keep yourself away from the wall. Don't rub up against that, or it'll just it gets all over whatever you touch. And it's hard to get off. It's not, if it gets on your clothes, it's permanent. It'll never come out. If you get it out, it's a miracle. I'd like you to call me and tell me what you used to get it out of your clothes. If you had a good shirt or something, or a pair of pants that you liked, and you were successful getting the stain out, man, I'd like to know what that was. And we could sell the heck out of that product. Anyway, without getting into that any further, let that dry for a good 24 hours so that it can hydrate the rest of the water that you've used to flood that surface. And then you'll be ready to go with your finish coats. Here, the primer epoxy coat, and then the finish epoxy coat, and or the urethane coat. Don't know why I had a brain cramp there. So that'll be the next thing that we'll go into. You'll see the processes here in live footage, some photos once again, so you can see more closely how the methods are here of doing the cleanup and the neutralizing side of things, and I'll have some concluding remarks afterwards. This is the neutralization segment that I've pulled out of the outline and overview, just as a reminder for you to see really how simple it is in way of the tools that you'll need to have to be prepared to clean up the acid stain residue after you've applied it overnight. Give it about 24 hours. It just takes a lot of water. It's going to take a lot of time, and it's going to just take patience for you to work through it. You'll be going through 4, 5, 6, 7 buckets, just depending on how much residue of the acid is left behind and how much of the concrete has contaminants lifted up out of the concrete as a result of the muriatic acid. We begin neutralizing with just cold water and a mop. We'll probably have to go over this 4 or 5 times until we get all this acid residue off. But that's all good. We do what it takes to make sure it's neutralized properly and that we have a good clean floor for the epoxy and the urethane to go to. Colors are looking awesome. That's the olive green around the perimeter of the eye of the hurricane here. That's the ebony. That is the black, darker color, and then of course the blue, the awesome blue, is the turquoise. Isn't that awesome? It looks good wet now. It's going to be just absolutely dazzling once the epoxy and the sealer is put on place. Not a lot of residue. A lot of this is good that it drove down deep into the concrete. Rinse out your mop periodically once you can feel that it's running out of moisture in the mop itself, and then there's going to be a lot of coming and going with the water. We're going to have to empty the dirty water pretty frequently. We may have to go from room to room kind of a thing, so we always have clean water going in our favor here. This basement has 3 different colors, ebony, turquoise, and olive. And then this garage floor that's demonstrated here has ebony, turquoise, olive, and jade as the color combinations used on this concrete. Once your water starts to look like this, rinse it out, clean it out, and start out fresh again. You can see how dirty that is now. That way we're not just spreading the same dirt around, the same residue of the acid stain around. Change that one out. Make it all good again. This is kind of a replica. It's a little bit dumbed down as to how this will look when it is sealed. It'll actually look a lot more rich and vibrant once it's sealed. But this is a good, gives you a good bird's eye view of it all. It's awesome. As I mentioned earlier, the cleanup is probably the dirtiest part of this whole process. It really is nasty. Just make sure that you find a good spot where you can rinse down the residue super good, just so that you don't have any contaminants killing any of your landscape. This is what these 2 projects look like after they've been neutralized and had time to dry. One being this garage floor that we've had live footage on, and the balance of these photographs are all in the basement floor that we've had live footage of. Each of these having different color combinations, but 2 in common being the ebony and the turquoise. The other is that this basement floor had olive thrown in there, and then the garage floor had one other called jade acid stain that was thrown in there. This pretty much completes all of the neutralization and cleaning side of our video. And so that's pretty much it on the neutralization side of our acid staining training course. I think we've covered all the details in that. It's just a lot of elbow grease and putting in all of the time that's necessary and the patience to get through multiple moppings and rinsing of the acid residue. So good luck with that. Be just super cautious, as I was talking about the environment wise on that, and then just whatever areas you are putting that in that's questionable, be sure you flood it really good, rinse it down super good, and you should be safe and sound. And we'll look forward now to seeing you in the next segment of concluding the acid staining training course with applying the epoxy primer coat, and then the final, basically the same steps involved in putting down the secondary coat of the high gloss water-based epoxy and or urethane finish coat on your acid staining project. See you there.